ubundi muri FDLR bavuga yuko babibara mu bice byinshi. Bavuga ko abatutsi uruhande rumwe ngarabaturutse muri Ethiopia atari abanyarwanda. Muri ideologies yindi bakavuga yuko ngo baturutse mu ijuru ngari bimanuka. Ubwo nizo terime zo bakoresha kugira ngo bumvishe abantu yuko abatutsi ntantu bahuriye n'ubundi bwoko buri hano mu Rwanda ko baje babusanga. Je imyaka zose namazemo bitewe nuko ntenagira nyine kugorogera rwa promyesherija je ntago bampembaga ko ari ukwigwariza. Twaramwisikotingaga nibyo ico baduhaga no kutugurira bote gusa imyenda ubundi tugakora akazi kasikuruti. Kubera ko bapfuye bazira ibintu by'akarengane batazi babirimo nabo batazi ubwabo ico bagwanira icari cyo by'akajagari babiteye agahinda nyine kugira ngo umwana w'umunyarwanda afire muri Kongo azira ubusa. Nje navuye muri Kongo mfite umudamu twarasezeranye. Umudamu wanje tubanaga hano. Umuntu ukuvuga rero ku buzima bundi busanzwe tuzatura mu rugo. Imyuga tuziga nizo tuzakoresha. Ariko bidashatse kuvuga yuko ari ibyo gusa. Uko twaje intego ari kubaka igihugu. Tugafatanya nabo dusanze ko igihugu. Leta igize ikindi kintu idukeneraho. Twayifasha.
Hello there. My guest this week on the Long Form podcast is Innocent Tuyubahe. Innocent is a former FDLR fighter who decided to lay down his arms, leave the jungles of Congo, and come back home. We shall discuss his life, what he saw in the jungles of Congo, and what he sees as his future here in Rwanda. We are recording this podcast here on the ground in Mutobo, Musanze district, at the Demobilization and Reintegration Center. Hello there. Before we dive into today's conversation, have you subscribed to our channel yet? If you haven't, do so. And remember to share your thoughts with us in the comments below and like this video. Your support means a lot. Now let's get into it. Innocent,
Yes.
Karibu.
Asante.
So I see that you were born in 1995 in Rwanda, actually, in Nyabihu district to be exact. I'd like to ask you, what are your childhood memories? Secondly, how did you end up leaving Rwanda and ending up in Congo? What year was that? And who did you go with?
Navuye ino mu Rwanda nyine.
All I remember when I left Rwanda is that I left in 1999. I went to Congo with my parents and I grew up there. Which means that we didn't live in Rwanda at all. We lived in Kirorerwa, Urungu, Kichanga, and Rutabi.
So you left Rwanda, you said that you left Rwanda in 1999, which would have made you 3 years old. When you reached Congo, what was life like? Did you go to school? Did you get a chance to go to school? What were your parents doing? Were they farmers? Were they businessmen, businesswomen? Can you tell me more about that?
I studied from Kirorerwa camp, where I went to school from primary 1 to primary 4. Then we moved to Rutabi on the way to Bwiza. This is where I also joined the rebel group in 2016. My parents were farmers who bought land in Kirorerwa and started farming.
So then you decided to join FDLR in 2016 as a young man. Why did you do it? FDLR kills people, rapes women, and actually wants to continue genocide in Rwanda. Those are not my words. Those are words from FDLR people who have been interviewed by international media. Why would you, in particular, want to be part of such a negative force? What was going on in your mind as you were joining FDLR?
Ubundi kuja muri FDLR baraje bashira
FDLR set up different posts in the zone I was living in.
amaze gushiramo ibintu bijanye n'abaposta nyine
They recruited mainly Rwandan boys who grew up in Congo.
abana b'abanyarwanda bagiye muri Congo mukurukiritsa rero.
Since we didn't grow up in Rwanda,
twakuriye inaha
we had little information as to what happened in Rwanda, seeing as we left when we were young. After recruitment, they fed us their own propaganda ideas while stripping themselves of any wrongdoing. FDLR also comprised Kinyarwanda speakers, convincing us that they are our relatives from Rwanda, and that's how we followed them.
But before you entered FDLR, didn't you have a profession? Weren't you doing something?
At the time, we had big plots of land, which we mainly used for farming.
At that time, what were you farming?
We used to farm potatoes, beans, yams, sweet potatoes, and more. We grew all of these crops there.
So the land that you were farming in, how big was it in terms of hectares?
The land was about 2 hectares.
Why would you make the decision to leave your farming life, yes, and then joined an armed group? Weren't you scared of being harmed?
We had no problem joining the army since we had never seen war, guns, or bullets.
But you were entering an armed group with guns. Obviously, something could have happened to you.
We were told that we would take self-defense courses and that nothing would happen to us.
So you entered FDLR when your parents had passed away?
Yes.
When your parents had passed away, who were you living with?
I lived with my sister in Congo.
So is your sister still alive?
She's still alive.
Where's your sister?
She lives in Jenda. She has also come back home.
So there's a narrative in some places that want people to believe that the FDLR is a group made up of harmless old men. Is that true? Or is it a group that is still recruiting and growing its forces, recruiting young women, young men? Secondly, when you were part of FDLR, what is the ideology that you were exposed to?
FDLR has 2 sections, including ex-FAR soldiers and those who joined later as our changes. This is made up of some old men, and the other rebels are children that were born in forests and other local Congolese recruited from small towns. When you get there, the first ideology you're taught is one that stops you from trying to go back home. Telling you that you are immediately killed when you try to go home, and that our parents were killed in the war in Rwanda. They promised us revenge, which made us stay longer. As time passed with bad living conditions, we got tired and started asking for real information on what happened. And that some of the soldiers who committed genocidal acts were among the FDLR. All of this and more research on what actually happened is what pushed me to find a way to come back to Rwanda.
Before we continue into your journey, I'd like to continue having a better understanding of FDLR ideology. How do they see Tutsis?
The FDLR defines Tutsis in different ways. Sometimes they say that Tutsis came from Ethiopia, and sometimes they say that Tutsi originated from heaven.
ubwo nizo terime zo bakoresha kugira ngo
These are the terms they use to convince us that Tutsis are so different from the local people.
uri hano mu Rwanda ko baje bagusangamo.
So, if you look at Tutsis this way, and we've seen what happened in 1994, if FDLR was to come back into Rwanda, what were their plans for the Tutsis that they found here?
In that case, genocide would be a big possibility, since all the youth in FDLR believes that the Tutsi are their biggest enemy. Whether young or old, the Tutsi is their enemy.
So that is the ideology that you are taught.
Yes, this is the ideology that we are taught.
As an escort of FDLR Commander Pacifique Nawunguka, otherwise known as General Omega, from 2016 to 2022, your area of operation was the Virunga National Park. How close were you in your operations to the Rwandan border? Can you give us some details of what those operations actually entailed?
In the Volcanoes Park, my escortee, Commander Omega, was in charge of preparing all the operations. He would assign those who would attack the defenses and those to look for food and other supplies. The distance between where we were and the border of Rwanda was roughly a 2-day walk. The battles occurred in Tongo, while other operations were just performing ravitaillements, which essentially means finding supplies for soldiers like cows from Giza as well as yams from villagers' plantations and so on.
So, what happened in 2022 to make you move your area of operations? Can you give us some details of the events of the time?
In 2022, we had bases in Tongo, in the volcanic parks. A lot of fights occurred after M23 had acquired the Kiwomba Karengera Road, and they extended the fight to our base. As we fought, we would retreat from base to base, retreating 20 minutes further and sometimes 5 minutes. As the war approached us, taking some of our comrades, we decided to climb towards Nyamuragira all the way to Songa. When we reached Songa, we kept on fighting. And then we found ourselves in Rusayo. The fight unrolled until we got to Bambiro zone.
When you talk about fighting, one, how big was your fighting force? And secondly, who exactly were you fighting with?
At the time, we were around 200 in the headquarters base of FDLR. That's where M23 attacked us and they overpowered us. We kept on fighting until we were pushed further into Karuri and then all the way to Bambiro.
So you and other FDLR fighters eventually joined a larger coalition to fight against M23. Who were the members of that coalition? Did you personally take part in any of the fights between the coalition and M23? And if so, can you tell us personally what you saw?
The coalition of people fighting against the M23 includes the FDLR, the CMC headed by Domi, the APCLS headed by Janvier Karairi, and the other coalition militia calling themselves Wazalendo.
bakaba bakoranaga n'ingabo z'Uburusiya.
These work closely with the Russian military as well as Burundian soldiers called Imbonerakure.
Bakaba bose
All these militia occupy the Sake zone.
mu ntambara yo kurwanira
During the fight against M23 in the Sake area,
intambara y'Isake yose
we managed to push them back a little and we fought against the Russians too.
intambara yose yabaye mpari tujana kurwana n'Abarusiya.
All the injured were taken back to Goma in Katindo Hospital to receive medical treatment.
muri biriya bitaro bitaga Ikagatindo. Ndi no kuvuga ngo mbere,
And you know, before we got mixed up with the FRDC back in Tongo,
twakoreshaga amaposita abasirikari bacaga amakara,
we had charcoal depots on our bases, which would make money for some of our supplies,
abasirikari bikeya,
while others would come from our scavengers in people's farms.
bajya kubishakamo aho misozi begereye. Ono ga amaposita gatandukanye.
The bases had two duties,
inshingano ibiri. Mwizo nshingano hari harimo
namely guiding the militias from Kazaroho to other FDLR bases,
ahandi hari ibindi birindiro bya FDLR,
and that's how they would merge us at Tongo base. That's how life was before the war.
Aho ngaho niko imibereho zari zimeze intambara itaratangira. Ariko no kuvuga intambara.
And as soon as the war started,
muri Tongo
we moved from Tongo and on to Bambiro, where we built a stronger base. When we got there, FRDC sent General Mugabo, who had a meeting with Commander Omega and struck a deal about what both ends will be providing to each other. FARDC brought 3 trucks full of guns and ammunition, a road construction machine which built the road to Miembe base in Sake, as well as residential settlements. They also gave them a car for transport when attending their meetings, as well as 4 motorbikes to facilitate supplies transportation. That's the life we had. Uniforms, guns, and boots are brought upon any slight change. Additionally, since the FARDC receives their salaries on 15th, that's when we get our supplies from them too. About supply sharing, considering that Wazalendo is headed by FDLR, the supplies were brought to Miembe base, and Kyome, who is the current base commander, does the sharing to all the others, such as Domiz Nyatura, APCLS, located in Sake, and more. That is how it is shared with Wazalendo. However, the government's armed groups get their supplies from Bambiro. FDLR's capacity is 2,000 rebels, divided in 4 battalions, including one operating from Kazaroho to Karengera to Mabenga. The second one operates from Gwindi to Nyanzare, and the third one is Credos, operating in Rugari, Kibumba, and Masisi.
bari bakuriwe na
All of them reports to Tongo, which is the headquarter base.
ni ukuvuga ngo ibyerekeye
About the reinforcement, the Burundian army comes in to assist the Congolese one in a somewhat illegal manner.
nabwo ubusa n'ubutemewe zikaza zitaranyuze mu nzira igomba kunyura.
That's because they don't go through the proper procedures.
zigeze kuri tere hamwe n'Abarusiya babaga barabakodesha.
When they touch ground, they meet the Russian mercenaries.
bo basanga ari uko bagura bose baraza we bagiye kuri tere nyine aba EF.
In such cases, they all attack the same place.
Abarundi bose bagenda kwatakana hamwe.
Would you like to partner with us here at the Longform? If you do, you can send an email to us at longformrwanda@gmail.com. Partner with us and become part of Rwanda's most exciting and in-depth podcast. How many white mercenaries did you see?
Ubundi Abarusiya
Russian mercenaries brought in heavy ammunition, and they rotate because not all of them go to the battleground.
ariko ugereranyije nuko nabonye umubare gwabo muri
According to my calculations, there was like 3 platoons,
ikompanyi igiraga
each comprising 32 soldiers.
rero iko irimo amaporoto atatu.
So, do FDLR soldiers, do they have salaries? And if so, who pays them? How do they get paid?
ubundi ni ukuvuga ibijanye n'ibintu bijanye n'imihembere z'abasirikare muri FDLR.
If IRDC pays all the FDLR combatants on the battlefield significant quotas,
hari amakota FARDC ibahereza, noneho abatagiye kuri
some of them who don't go there usually don't get paid.
badahembwa abarimo nyine nk'abapromyesheri.
The first surgeons are not paid and they are given posts on the road instead from Kichanga, and that's how they generate their revenue.
ibihembo byabo ni ukuvuga ngo ayo mafaranga abayagenda.
These soldiers also reports back to Commander Omega, who keeps the money so
barakora akazanira raporo General Omega akabari.
that means they get something for themselves too before they report.
ni ukwihemba. donc ni ukuvuga ngo
As of now, all the soldiers in different command bases don't get paid. Regular soldiers don't get paid, but first sergeants get somewhat of a salary. All other lower soldiers don't get paid because commanding officers split the money among themselves and just take it.
How much were you getting paid?
Since I had not been promoted to first sergeant yet, I wasn't getting paid at all. I had to survive on my own.
You were actually an escort though. You did not get anything.
Yes, we were escorts, but we only got paid in boots and uniform. The salary they talk about is the roadblocks, which wasn't always honest work. If, for example, the actual charge is 500 Congolese francs, and you charge them 1,000 Congolese francs, you understand that there is my interest in that. This is how we used to gain the money. As I was always on the field in the name of looking for supplies for soldiers, we would loot cows, people's crops and farms, and all that. This is how we would get our supplies without paying for them. This is still being done to this day, and it's not just FDLR. All the Wazalendo benefits from this loot. When they are lucky to find something, they always share it with FIRDC. You understand that this is the same consignment, so they share it all.
Did you lose a lot of friends in the battles?
Yes, I lost 2 friends.
How do you feel about it?
Well, since they all died fighting for a lost cause that they were unaware of, it is a sad thing to witness a Rwandan die in a Congolese war that is actually in vain.
So eventually you decided that enough was enough and you'd rather come home to Rwanda rather than die fighting in the Congo. What brought you to this change of mind? Weren't you worried that you, as someone who was fighting against Rwanda, weren't you worried that the government of Rwanda could perhaps hurt you, especially because you were part of a terrorist group that actually wanted to overthrow it? Can you also, if you don't mind, tell us about the risk that you had to take by leaving FDLR? Weren't you worried that they could perhaps kill you if they ever caught you trying to escape?
The
thing that changed my mind was this lady that was captured by M23 in our fights in Tongo. When she reached here in Mutobo, and she told me that everything we were taught is a lie, and that she would have come to Rwanda earlier if she knew the reality. She explained to me how the country was developed, how she met with my sisters, and how they were alive and wanted me to come home. She then told me which direction to take, considering that I was already in Bambiro, and then that's how I decided to come home. I wasn't just afraid, because one is executed very easily once their plans to go home are discovered and they can't afford having information leaked. Of course I had fear, but when you plan to go home and with God's blessing, you reach home safely. If not, then your journey cuts short.
When
I made up my mind to come home, it wasn't very easy. Since in the Kagatindo area lives a lot of FDLR families. So you understand, I was not at rest, and I had to move with stealth. I departed early in the morning, like 7 a.m., and I was in contact with MONUSCO. They guided me through until we met at the President roundabout in Goma. They took me to their base. This was roughly on the 24th December. I spent a week there and we left on the 3rd January. We met at Gisenyi at the Grand Barrière. They received me and we left around 6:30 a.m. and they brought me back here to Mutobo. I found Uwiduhaye Chantal at the border, and she welcomed me. She told me that all was okay in Rwanda and I was at ease. Before that, I was still uneasy since I didn't know anyone. I saw no buildings that I hadn't seen before and such. The head of the Mutobo camp was also present, and Chantal introduced me. When we reached the camp, we received soap, clothes, and a tour of the camp showing us how Rwanda was safe. After a week, they told me that they would give me permission and transport to tour the country and see how peaceful everything was. I was then glad that I found friends and family and to finally be home.
ko mu gihugu canje ntisanzemo njyenyine mpasanze abandi biranshimisha cyane nyine ndiyakira.
So let's now talk about where we are today. You're going through the demobilization and reintegration process here in Mutobo in Rwanda. You've been in Rwanda for maybe now 4 or so months. What has the process been like for you? What are you learning? What do you hope to get out of it? And lastly, what future do you see for yourself?
Ubundi ibintu bya mbere cyashiro cya mbere twiga nuko cyambere no twigisha.
The first thing they teach us is the history of our country. Then we learn how the wars unfolded, and we see how things actually happened rather than the twisted version. We are now close to the end of this chapter, where we are now learning what the government's plan is, how the country functions, existing ministries, hospitals, banks, how roads were constructed, and more. After these lessons, we will learn technical and vocational education training courses to help us gain some knowledge, since we spent a lot of time fighting in the forest. I see my future as a person contributing to the development of the country. When we live here, we will join cooperatives. We will then receive tools to help us carry out our jobs. When we start earning money, we will be saving in the banks, which will help us have a better future. Everything that they teach us and the advice they give us will help me develop. They teach us entrepreneurship courses and personal growth. It's clear that the future holds a lot for us. In terms of what I want to do after this, well, I left Congo after being wedded to my wife. We live here together. We will live at home in Nyabihu, and we will live from the skills we will have learned here. Moreover, when we came back, our goal was to help the country to develop. Therefore, anything else that the government requires of us, we will oblige.
Is your wife Rwandan?
My wife is Rwandan.
How old is she?
She is 27.
You're saying that you want to go back home. You mean Nyabihu?
We will go back home to Nyabihu in Jenda.
Maybe live in Kigali.
Everywhere I go, I have to know someone there. Thus, I haven't been to Kigali yet.
Aren't you curious to see what Kigali is like?
I am curious about everywhere in Rwanda, not just Kigali.
What profession do you want to get into?
I want to pursue tailoring.
What were your first impressions of Rwanda?
When I got to Rwanda, I was really curious to see whether the rumors were true. I wanted to see whether they really welcome you back with open arms and how they treat you. I wanted to also be able to give a message of hope to the other rebels still fighting in the forest. They welcomed us very well, gave us all the basic needs, and we're now even close to the end of our curriculum.
Last question. You'll be going back to the community that you wanted to harm only a few months ago. This community might be scared of you and the ideology that you once had. What do you want to tell these people who might not fully trust that you are now a responsible citizen of Rwanda.
abo dusanze mu Rwanda b'Abanyarwanda nkuko tuje kubaka.
People that we find here in Rwanda will probably be afraid of me because I am from the forest of Congo.
Ntabwo bara gutinya nyine ishamba n'ishamba. Ntabwo bara gutinya.
It stands to reason that we go through this process. So, we will use all the lessons we learned to rehabilitate ourselves and live in peace with the families we found here. Of course, we are going to know how to show them that despite growing up in the forest, we have changed. These are the things we learned in order to rehabilitate and coexist with the people we found back home.
Thank you. If you enjoyed the conversation today, share your thoughts with us on our social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.